as was an opposition activist. And a candidate gunned down in his home just hours before the polls were to open. The man who championed the election cast his ballot early Sunday. President Nicolas Maduro is pressing on with the vote to heavily consolidate his power despite international condemnation. The opposition calls the plan a power grab. Our Leila Santiago is joining us now from the middle of all of this, the capital city of Caracas. Hi there, Leila. First off, how tense is the situation right now as this controversial vote is continuing to be underway?
Anna, that tension has been building all week, and we saw it play out on the streets today. You saw that massive explosion in one part of town, still under investigation exactly who is behind that, but clearly that is something that is having an impact with so many people injured. The death toll now standing at 118, and the violence continues as some people take to the polls to speak out and have a say in this constituent assembly that could rewrite the Constitution. Others are taking to the street, not backing down from President Nicolas Maduro, who, by the way, just within the last half hour took to social media to thank all those participating in today's election and urge people, especially young people, to get out to the polls to vote for a new assembly that, again, could rewrite the Constitution. But you talk to the opposition, the people out on the streets right now, they say, look, we don't need a new constitution. We don't need a new assembly. They want a new government, and they are not backing down. We were there as we saw one clash between Venezuela's National Guard and the opposition, and you could just tell that both sides seem to be standing for what they believe is democracy and liberty. But as you see on the streets and as you see on the polls, very different ways of going about that. On the streets, people will tell you this is a crisis based on food and medical shortages, a collapsing economy, a crisis that they are living every day, and they want change, and they don't believe this is the way to do it, Anna.
Leila Santiago, it's Amber here, but thank you anyway. Appreciate your live report there from Caracas. Now, opponents of the vote fear an end to democracy. For more on how this will all affect the future of Venezuela, Eric Farnsworth joining us now from Washington. He's the Vice President of American Society and Council of the Americas. Eric, great to see you as always. I was just looking at some polls that shows that a huge majority, I think more than 70% of Venezuelans oppose this vote, but we know that President Maduro, he's undeterred no matter what the world has been saying to him, what he has been threatened with. He's going to get what he wants. Will it be sustainable?
Well, I think that's exactly right. This has been a predetermined process and a predetermined vote since the day it was announced, and we know what the outcome is going to be. The only question is what percentage will vote in favor and how many people will the government claim actually turned out to vote. Both numbers undoubtedly will be highly suspect. But what this means going forward, I think, is a country that goes further into unitary government, toward dictatorship, and a country that is increasingly isolated from the international community. Not just the United States, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, Panama, other countries in Latin America as well have said they're not going to recognize the results of this constitutional assembly because it's illegitimate and fraudulent. And so they've already laid a marker, and there's not a whole lot of room to negotiate from that perspective. So this is further isolating Venezuela, no question.
International isolation is not going to be good for the people there. They need help. They need basic supplies. Inflation is at an all-time high. President Trump is threatening more sanctions, as are many other countries who are looking into it. What does this mean for the average person who says, look, I just want to be able to buy a carton of milk at a very reasonable price?
What this means for them is their life is going to get increasingly more difficult. It's already been difficult for the last several years. Some people in Venezuela are actually starving. That's not to say everybody is, but the availability of food is inconsistent. The healthcare system has collapsed. The education system at this point is little more than propaganda for the government. This is a country where the average citizen is the one that is clearly suffering the most. And that's ironic because the Chavista revolution, when Hugo Chavez was alive, was voted into power on the basis of trying to lift up the population, reduce poverty, make opportunity more equal. And in fact, what's happened over time has been the opposite. But it is the common person that's going to feel, that's going to suffer the ill effects most heavily.
So once this voting is said and done, essentially all branches of government are going to be under socialist control, because that was the last, I guess, branch of government that was controlled by the opposition. What here is the strategy for Maduro going forward, especially when he has a country has literally fallen apart? A lot of his people do not support him.
It's hard to say what the strategy will be, because this is not sustainable. At some point the money does run out, even though Venezuela does have the world's largest supply of oil. But, you know, they're living on debt. They're having real difficulty paying that debt back. At some point, presumably, the world community refuses to give Venezuela more credit. Meanwhile, the price of oil continues to be where it is, and probably won't go much higher anytime soon. That's really what a lot of the government seems to be hoping for. So they're trying to muddle through, hold on to power. But what is the long-term strategy other than just consolidate power and continue to repress the people? It's not clear, because they have no strategy for changing the direction of the economy and finding a path back to growth. I think that's the key element there, which means that over time this is unsustainable.
Tell us more about this all-powerful constituent assembly and how it is expected to operate, because as I understand it, I mean, in theory, the assembly has more power than the president himself. So could this actually possibly backfire on Maduro?
You know, that is a really interesting question, and it hasn't gotten a lot of discussion, but it is an assembly that will have almost absolute power, and the number of high-level administration officials that are involved in this is quite significant. It will have the power to rewrite the Constitution. It will have the power to determine the direction of the country, and so by definition, whoever's in the leadership of the Constitutional Assembly is going to be, in some ways, the de facto president of Venezuela. That's going to be a competing power center with the president himself and the executive branch. So this is going to be interesting how this plays out. I don't think we quite know the answer to that, but just coordination within the Chavista movement and within the government itself is going to, I think, occupy a lot of time and attention going forward.
And I wonder who will control that constituent assembly in the end. We'll be watching this closely with you as well, Eric Farnsworth. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Time to take a short break here on CNN Today. Up next, finger-pointing threats and new shows of force. Ahead, reaction to North Korea's latest missile launch, which is now calling an exciting victory.